Salam and welcome to Setit Media, where we bring facts, clarity, and Eritrea first perspective to the Horn of Africa's most pressing issues. Tonight's question is the tripartite agreement between Eritrea, Egypt, and Somalia a threat to Ethiopia, or is it simply Ethiopia's own confusion playing out in a regional stage? In October last year, Eritrea hosted a summit with Egypt and Somalia. The three nations agreed to uphold sovereignty, reject external interference, support Somalia's fight against terrorism, and secure the Red Sea and Bab el Mandeb. Yet, in Addis Ababa, media and activists have painted this as a hostile alliance. Why does Ethiopia feel threatened? What does this mean for Eritrea's sovereignty and regional stability? To unpack this, I am joined by Engineer Suleiman Adam Hussein, a contributing member of Setit Media. Engineer, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Abdul.
Um, Probably you are off the stage. I don't know if you heard the introduction, but today or tonight we are going to talk about the tripartite agreement between Eritrea, Egypt, and Somalia that took place last year. I know we are a little bit behind because this event took place last year, but it's still relevant. It still remains relevant in the region. That's why I chose to make it a topic today. And you are here as a political analyst of the region. You're here to unpack what it does, what it means, and why is Ethiopia feeling threatened? Why is the anxiety level in Addis Ababa is high? So we're gonna unpack that. Let's start with what seems obvious but deserves unpacking. What does Ethiopia perceive, or why does Ethiopia perceive this Eritrea, Egypt, and Somalian agreement as a threat when it states principle? I'm saying it states principle, sovereignty, stability, and non-interference appears beneficial to the region. When they say sovereignty, stability, and non-interference, it is beneficial to the region of Horn of Africa, which includes Ethiopia. So, why does Ethiopia feels threatened by this alliance?
Uh, Thank you, Abdul. And by the way, I don't think we are behind because the the dynamics in the Horn of Africa um, are shifting all the time, and alignment, realignment, and so on and so forth. And because this is about an ongoing crisis that has the potential of endangering or further endangering the already volatile Horn of Africa. Um, it has the potential of uh, bringing yet
Hmm.
another to the Horn, as if now because Ethiopia wanted to, in flagrant violation of international law and all the norms of and that are effective among states in the 20th century, 21st century. Ethiopia wants us by peace or by any means necessary, which implies or use the force, seaports that it does not have the right to. And these countries are saying no to the violation of international law, no to the violation of sovereignty of any state, including Ethiopia, and let's work together to help Somalia um, um, get back to its normalcy and play its important role in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea basin. So Ethiopia wants a free hand to use the threat of force and to coerce these countries into accepting to compromise their own sovereignty and territorial integrity. And these countries are saying collectively, and the international law is behind them, and they are saying collectively no to this madness, I would call it. So I mean, it's obvious that they would not be happy because they didn't expect these countries to come together so swiftly and so decisively and react and say and no. Not only that, and show that they are able also to bring the madness to an end if necessary.
Okay. This begs a question because me and you and everyone we've been following what like the Ethiopian reaction after last year's tripartite agreement in Asmara. Ethiopia, in a different ways, they displayed their displeasure, and there has been obvious anxiety. So the following question I'd like to ask you is this really about the agreement itself or Ethiopia's own internal weakness and fragmentation? What is it about?
I think it's both. Because the Ethiopian ruling, in fact, I would say three factors.
Okay.
One is the Ethiopian elite has always been, until further notice, been hostage to the wrong narrative that Ethiopia existed for 3 millennia and had sea access through the via the Red Sea and in the Indian Ocean, and do not accept the simple fact that Ethiopia, as we know it today, came into being in the 19th century under the Menelik II, the emperor of Showa, and who expanded his kingdom to include much of the what we call Ethiopia today, and agree with the colonial powers and in defining the borders of the new state called Ethiopia. So this Ethiopian Ethiopia that we know and is known in modern history and in recognized under international law, from day one was and still is a landlocked country.
Mhm.
So contrary to the narrative put forward by the Ethiopian elite. So the Ethiopian elite has been always hostage of their old, mm, what do you call, distorted history and distorted narrative, which they believe and they want the world to bring. That's one. The other factor is, as you rightly said, uh, what the French say call the la fuite en avant, which is how do I put it in English? The escape forward. Uh, when you have a lot of problems and you have no solution to those problems, you create further problems. Okay, to run away or to escape from facing those challenges. So the internal crisis in Ethiopia has always been one of the reasons why Ethiopia is in a perpetual state of war with all its neighbors. You call it Somalia. We as Eritreans, of course, have been the victim of this for the last 80 years, but also every other single country in the Horn of Africa has always been to one degree or another a victim of this mindset. So they see it as a way to escape from existing challenges by, by creating new facts on the ground, uh, which often fail and bring Ethiopia even more problems.
Mm,
And the the third one is, at least in its modern history, since the end of the World War, uh, Ethiopia has always been ruled by an elite willing to be a proxy uh,
mm,
for other international and regional powers. And I'm bringing this as a third factor because one of the reasons why the Horn of Africa has always been in a state that we all know is because it's very strategically important. And it's right at the gateway of the Red Sea. And so the superpowers, and in particular Western countries, and more so the United States of America, after the end of World War, have always looked at this strategic location as so important to the U.S. that it has to come directly or indirectly under the control of the U.S. And Ethiopia played the local agent, and
mm,
so the marriage of convenience between the expansionist agenda of the imperial Haile Selassie of Ethiopia and the the, the forces of domination, which dominate the southern end of the Red Sea, and the gateway to much of the world, actually the Indian Ocean, and you name it, to Eastern, Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. So this convenience, marriage convenience, was one of the reasons why Eritrea was denied the right to self-determination in line with the UN resolution that declared that colonialism have to end, and all those colonial states should exercise their full right to self-determination. Eritrea, guess what, was the only country that was denied this basic right. So all this combined now for a combination of internal factors, including the ones you rightly referred to, which is the deep political and economic and security crisis within Ethiopia itself, and also the agenda of regional and international powers who are behind it. Ethiopia wants to become a coastal state to serve the interests not of the Ethiopian people, because the Ethiopian people are better served if Ethiopia comes to an agreement with its neighbors and have access to sea in mutually beneficial commercial terms, as the United Nations law of the sea states. But Ethiopia wants to become a coastal power in order to serve the geostrategic interests of other powers.
mm,
So I would say all these factors combined are behind the current state of affairs in the Horn of Africa, and so no one would be surprised if Ethiopia is unhappy uh, when Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, Sudan, those countries were directly concerned
mm.
by this aggressive posture when they collectively no. So no wonder the Ethiopian ruling elite would not be happy.
Okay. Um, some also argue, Engineer Suleiman, Ethiopia sees Egypt inherently hostile because of the Nile Dam or Nile dispute. But here, Egypt's role is, as it has been mentioned or seen in the agreement, is constructive, supporting Somalia and the Red Sea security. So, do you see Ethiopia is overreacting? Do you think Ethiopia is overreacting?
Well, in a way, it is overreacting, and in a way, Ethiopia brought the situation to itself, uh,
Hmm,
because uh, uh, some Egypt, before we come to Egypt and Eritrea, Egypt and Somalia, let's briefly mention for the purpose of um, bringing everything into the bigger picture that Ethiopia and Egypt have their own problems related to sharing water resources around the Nile River and so on and so forth. So this is an open secret. Now, this problem between the two countries cannot be solved by creating yet more problems, uh, but by diplomatic engagement, by respecting each other's interests, and also by bringing into play the international law, which is designed in order to facilitate the peaceful resolution of conflicts. So, this background. Ethiopia would not have, Egypt would not have come to Somalia if Somalia did not invite it. And if Somalia would not have invited it if Ethiopia did not threaten Somalia to violate its sovereignty and take part of its territorial sovereign territories.
Mhm.
So, if Ethiopia is not happy about the presence of robust presence of Egypt in Somalia, then it only has itself to blame because Egypt was not there before January 2024 when in Ethiopia and clear violation of Somalia's not only Somalia's sovereignty but also the the African Union Charter and all the international laws when it decided to enter into an agreement with the breakaway region of Somalia and have part of its coastal areas. So, and rightly so, Somalia felt threatened and reacted forcefully and created alliances with other powers, including Turkey and Egypt. So the whole situation changed dramatically after Ethiopia uh, miscalculated and probably thought Somalia is so weak it may not be in a position to stop what Ethiopia intended to do. Unfortunately for Ethiopia, this was not the case, and so Somalia played all its legal and diplomatic cards very well, and mm, obtained a huge support from the international community, including those who are best friends of Ethiopia. So this whole situation changed dramatically after January 2024. And the rest is detail, I think.
Mm. Before I jump to the next sets of questions, uh, in 2019 there was another tripartite agreement between Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Somalia. So what makes this the Asmara summit last year is different from that one, in your opinion?
Uh, which one from which one? Sorry, Abdul.
From the tripartite partite agreement between Eritrea, Somalia, and Ethiopia back in 2019. There was one back in 2019, but that one we don't
The
know.
one between Ethiopia, Somalia, and
And Eritrea.
uh, um,
So what makes
partly
this what makes the one between Eritrea, Sudan, Somalia, and Egypt different than the one between the one between Eritrea, Somalia,
in,
and
in in
Ethiopia?
a normal world, and uh, Somalia and Ethiopia closer to each other than any other country on the planet. And the same goes to Ethiopia and Eritrea. The same goes to Ethiopia and Djibouti. And the same goes to Eritrea and Sudan, Ethiopia and Djibouti. So that idea was born in Asmara, uh, which began with the three heads of states from Somalia, following, of course, the peace agreement between Eritrea and Ethiopia after over 20 years of state of war. Um, that idea was to create a new dynamic in the Horn of Africa, and that goes gradually toward this economic, social, and political integration of the countries of the Horn of Africa. Okay. Unfortunately, one of the founders of that agreement, which is Ethiopia, started by, well, before I go that, part of that agreement was to respect each other's sovereignty and collectively work for the security and stability of the Horn of Africa. Okay, that means from external powers. And guess what? The two countries were threatened by the very country who was party to this agreement. The security and sovereignty of these two countries, Eritrea and Somalia, was threatened by none other but the, 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 the party that made the agreement, signed the agreement in Asmara. This, of course, brings a lot of questions, and I don't want to go into details now. Maybe we don't have enough time for that. But so the difference is the tripartite one, the one with Egypt. Um, they may not say it, but I mean, the leaders may not say it, but the simple fact is it came as a response to this um, aggressive posture by the Ethiopian government that directly threatens the sovereignty and territorial integrity of these states and the security of the Red Sea. And so Egypt is part of this alliance because any change of situation in the Red Sea would further complicate the existing problem between Egypt and Ethiopia because well, the security of the southern part of the Red Sea, which is the Bab el Mandeb, is directly linked to the Suez Canal, which is another vital issue for Egypt, and Egypt obtains. First of all, its strategic importance is linked to the fact that it possesses the Suez Canal that links the east and the west, and also financially it brings around $10 billion a year. So one would understand why Egypt does not want any conflict in any part of the Red Sea. So the difference is that one was came on the aftermath of the Ethio-Eritrean peace process, and when people thought that, well, finally, leaders of the Horn of Africa may turn the page of conflict and work together towards a better Horn of Africa. Uh, with economic integration at its core, and with security cooperation at its core, and more importantly, independence at its core. But the latter one came in response to not only disappointment with the leaders of Ethiopia, but also in response to the imminent danger posed by the Ethiopian government.
Yeah.
That's how I would put.
Well put. You put it very well. Because if I want to reiterate what you said, the first one, the one we're talking about, it's 2019, the agreement between Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia, the head of states at that time, the Somalia's Farmajo, Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed, and Eritrea's Isaias Afwerki. They signed a tripartite agreement. So that one was to strengthen the regional cooperation, and to change the dynamics of the regional of the region from tensions to cooperation. But the one that came last year, 2024, was as a
May I add just one point, Abdul, if you don't mind?
absolutely.
It's not to take the blame from the Ethiopian leaders. There is every reason to blame them, for sure. But also, I just remembered the former spokesperson of the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I think his name is
Ambassador
Ambassador
Dina Mufti.
Dina Mufti, and he put it so well. I don't know why he had come to come so honestly in one of his interviews. He said in the normal world, Eritreans are brothers, and we should have a normal relationship. But the reason why our relationship with Eritrea deteriorated, uh, and because there are influential and mm, powerful countries that do not want us to have good relations with Eritrea.
Mm,
So that's why after a good start, now we are back to square one, and then the, um, the naked reason behind it is because we are not allowed to. Now, so I wanted to bring in this aspect of the issue uh, to also talk about the being a client state or foreign, it's normal when states quarrel for their own national interests, and but at the end, if they keep in mind the need for collective peace and security, and adopt the international law, they would at some point sooner or later come to a mutually beneficial solution. Now, things change altogether when one of the parties to the conflict gets his or her orders from afar,
mhm,
and that's complicating the issue with Ethiopia. It's not about just about Ethiopian interest versus Eritrean interest, or Ethiopian interest versus Somali interest, because they at some point they would find an intersection and common ground. But there are countries very far from our region, but who control and dominate the world, and do not want an integrated and in Horn of Africa uh, states that complement each other in the Horn of Africa, because that would endanger their according to their understanding of geopolitical interests, they would put at risk their own security, economic, and geostrategic interests. So that
mm,
aspect is also we have to bear in mind when we talk about the Ethiopian government. And I think very recently, an advisor to the prime minister, the former president of the Tigray region, Getachew Redda, actually, I enjoyed that interview. He said, Ethiopia and Eritrea are very likely to go to war. The problem is the agenda for is not ours, so we should not
interesting.
continue to follow orders and fight for others because the this new phase of the conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea is dictated by other powers, but it's not dictated by Ethiopia's national interests. I really enjoyed. I don't know how he was able to continue in his ministerial post after saying those things, but for the benefit of bringing everything in a context, I think Ethiopia has its own understanding of its national interests, but also more than its national interests, the government serve the interests of foreign powers. That's why people really struggle to find a common ground and come to a solution. Yeah. Sorry if
mhm.
I took too.
No, no. Actually, it was very interesting, Suleiman, because this is the perspective that Eritrean. It's an Eritrean perspective that the world needs to understand. Uh, I would say not only Eritrean perspective, but it should also be like the regional perspective of the Horn of Africa. The conflicts between states and interstates conflicts that we see in Ethiopia and other countries are not necessarily or entirely their conflict. Those are like imposed conflicts. Those are like conflicts or wars are being fought by the people, citizens of Horn of Africa, for someone else. So I think this is very interesting perspective, and I think we
Who
should.
else would understand the main problem of the Horn of Africa other than Eritrean people who are already shaped by
Yeah,
this interplay between
I lost
ethnic
you. I lost you for a
from
second.
our region and, and forces of domination from abroad. Eritreans were denied their self-determination in the 1940s. Just because those who dictate things in the Horn of Africa are not Horn of Africans themselves, or the states in the Horn of Africa, or political groups, but the, the, the Western powers, and more particularly the US. So we have been uh, generations of Eritreans for the last probably close to 100 years. A generation of Eritreans have paid dearly and have been a victim of this. So if, if Eritreans develop an narrative that's based on this very problem, I think it's very understandable because they have been the victims. But by the way, it's not just Eritreans. Uh, and their closed doors, even Ethiopians say it. The problem is they cannot say it publicly, and 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 uh, and um, and take it as their policy, guiding principle for their policies, and the same goes for other countries. So the reality of the world is obvious to everyone, but not everyone is able to say it in black and white.
Mhm. Actually, I wanted to mention this. Maybe like a minute two ago, I lost you for a second. So your connection is trying. I think getting a little bit weaker. If that problem persists, probably we have to reschedule and continue because this is very deep
Oh,
and really interesting discussion. I want to make it because what you mentioned about Dina Mufti uh, and what the former interim president of Tigray region said, those are very core issues. And I think they have been guiding the policy of Ethiopia in the past, I don't know, as long as I remember. And now, the issue of Somaliland, the issue of the Red Sea access is not in necessarily the main objective or agenda of the Ethiopian people. Ethiopian people, like you rightly said, are being victims of this service, um, like a satellite state. Ethiopia as a state is as a country, maybe it's not, but the government, the elites, they always serve someone else, not their people. So I want Ethiopians to understand this, but I think, like I said, if the issue of connection persists, we have to reschedule another day. Uh, Suleiman, when we look at the agreement that we're talking about that took place October 10, 2014. It's almost a year ago. So let's look at what it says. The agreement says respect sovereignty and borders. It goes both ways. Reject foreign meddling. Uh, help Somalia rebuild and fight terror. Cooperate on the Red Sea and Bab el Mandeb security. So when you look at what the tripartite agreement between Somalia, Egypt, and Eritrea says, and look at the anxiety of Addis Ababa, it begs the following question. What specifically do you think Ethiopia fears most about those points? Because the points that I mentioned respect sovereignty and borders, reject foreign meddling, help Somalia rebuild and fight terror, and cooperate on the Red Sea and Bab el Mandeb. From all of those points, what do you think Ethiopia is afraid of?
well, I think the answer is pretty simple, Abdo. Uh, is the connection better now?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, the answer in my view is pretty simple. Uh, we don't have to go even far. We
Okay.
just need to listen to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. And he clearly said things that goes against those very points for the borders, and he said, "Oh, we should not be bothered about colonial borders," although that is sacrosanct in the contemporary Africa. For
Mm,
sovereignty, he went all the way to make an agreement with the breakaway region. That's the breach of violation of
mm. The, the connection problem is coming back again. It's not per se connection. I think it's the phone is heating up. That's what it seems to me.
Is it better now?
Yeah, I think it's from the phone. The phone is just heating up. Can you feel the heat of the phone?
Okay, okay. Let me take the yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Let's try this way.
Okay.
Now, I, I don't know where it is, so, but Dr. Abiy Ahmed made an agreement like no other country has done before with the breakaway region of Somalia and wanted to establish a naval base. And so when the three countries talk about the Red Sea region, there is a country which is not um, a coastal state who wants to establish a naval base in the Red Sea. So he also said many things, but to mention just few, he said Ethiopia will have to regain in bracket access to the Red Sea, preferably if they blinch and um, give it to us, we should call it peacefully, okay, and obviously under the threat, but if necessary, by any other means necessary, which means the will employ military
Force.
force to have an access. So this agreement is about all those violations. And now, if for a leader who has clearly threatened Somalia, threatened Djibouti, threatened Eritrea for invasion, although that invasion is not easy by itself, even if we take these countries separately, but when they come together, it becomes even more difficult. So one would understand the frustration for
Mm,
somebody who's planning to invade another country to get a sovereign access to the Red Sea. When these Red Sea countries come together, one would understand his frustration. Even though, even without the tripartite alliance invading and occupying coastal areas of any of these countries is not an easy exercise. But assuming, at least in the minds of Ethiopian leaders, they were they think they can do it. But when the countries come together, it becomes a more difficult exercise. So I think
mm.
that's explains the frustration.
Okay. Um, so let's look at the Eritrea's role in this issue. Um, from Eritrea's perspective, this agreement aligns with a long-standing principle of sovereignty, regional stability, and constructive engagement. Suleiman, how should Eritrea respond to Ethiopia's anxiety without compromising its sovereignty or appearing to retreat or provoking Ethiopia into a regrettable action?
Uh, I think Eritrea, like Somalia, I think they have been playing their cards very smartly and very wisely over the last couple of years when the threat from Ethiopia became so mm, obvious and became everyday talk for the leaders of Ethiopia. If we go back to 2 years ago, the state of affairs inside Ethiopia was much better than how it looks like today. The relationship between Ethiopia and its neighbors was much better the uh, the isolation which Ethiopia suffers today, like never before in its modern history. So I think all this is did not come because
Hmm. Uh,
because
are you there? Are you there?
yeah.
Uh,
I think it, yeah, yeah. But I think that that invasion or that rhetoric so far has been just in propaganda, mainly because these countries played their cards very well and created alliances that further strengthens their position. Can Eritrea do more? Of course, it can do more, especially at the diplomatic front with regard to addressing the international community. There are things that can be done even more and better. But so far, I think by and large, both internally strengthening its capabilities and its strengthening its ties with its neighbors and creating regional alliances. It has done a very good job, but it can do even more by like I said. For example, Ethiopia should have never been allowed to be the first country that would accuse Eritrea right to the Security Council because I think it's my personal view. Eritrea should have done that at least more than a year ago because it's not Eritrea that's threatening Ethiopia; it's the other way around. But uh, I'm bringing this point to show that although a lot of good things have been done, but uh, on the diplomatic front, there are a lot of things also that needs to be done and more aggressively and more effective diplomacy is needed. Another front is the although over the last year things are slightly better, but in dominating the narrative in the media is also part of the ongoing aggression against Eritrea. And uh, Eritrea, I don't think has been doing well enough in how do you call dictating the narrative in mass media. But as I said, over the last year, I think it's have slightly improved, but needs to be improved further. So on
mm,
those two fronts, media and diplomacy, Eritrea needs to improve. But on the security issues and creating regional alliances and alliances with neighbors, I think they have been Eritrean government by and large has been so far able to contain and the aggressive policy of the Ethiopian government.
mm. Um, Earlier you mentioned propaganda. There is a lot of propaganda around the ambitions of Ethiopian government and the mission of sea access. So at some point that you can they can be heard saying Russia is supporting the Ethiopian efforts to gain sea access, and another time you can hear them say French or France is supporting or supports Ethiopia's ambition to get a sea access. Also, a few weeks ago, they did interview with the U.S. ambassador to Ethiopia, and what he said and what they reported was completely opposite of each other. So what he's probably we can talk about what he said another day, but what they said was the U.S. supports Ethiopia's ambition to access the Red Sea. So why do you think there is a mix-up of This like made up white lies in in Ethiopian media.
I, I think to be fair, um all those countries who have expressed their sympathy um, to Ethiopia's quest of having access uh, to the sea were very careful inserting a phrase or two here and there, and then saying in agreement with neighboring countries and in respect of the international law. Now, Ethiopians don't report that aspect of what the Western countries say. Uh, one would say what the Western countries say about this is nothing wrong with it because Ethiopia does need access to the sea. If it's true, does need, but if only one would support Ethiopia's quest to access the sea under international law if Ethiopia was denied that access. The truth is, Ethiopia was never denied access to sea under international law. Uh, so, what Ethiopia wants is not access to sea that respects the international law and sovereignty of states. It wants to own a sovereign territory of sovereign countries. Okay. Now, Western countries do not come, or at least the ones we heard about, the ambassadors who um, every now and then show up at the Ethiopian TV, we don't hear them denouncing Ethiopia because Ethiopia is violating the international law and is threatening the sovereignty and territorial integrity of its neighbors. So they are not simply supporting, they are not simply asking for access, but they are threatening the stability of the Horn of Africa, peace of the Horn of Africa, and the sovereignty of the states of the Horn of Africa. But even beyond that, they are directly threatening international law because an international law would have no meaning if a country like Ethiopia is allowed to 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 do what it wants to do. So it's not just about Eritrea and Somalia. It's more about how the civilized world would collectively be responsible of upholding the international law or counterrate such madness, because no one knows if this madness would stop with Ethiopia or it would be the rule of the day tomorrow. Because there are so many other countries in this world who are who do not have what they want, but they have the power to take it from someone else, and the world would simply be ruled by the rule of jungle and not rule of law. So that's very, very dangerous precedent, and the international community should not allow even such uh, rhetoric to be the mainstream.
Mm.
So on that aspect, one wonders why Western countries are not coming out, although they never said Ethiopia has a right to to possess a seaport that belongs to Eritrea or Somalia. And in fact, they always say international law has to be respected, but they never uh, officially and loudly and clearly condemn it. Because if you don't condemn such a flagrant violation of international law, then what do you condemn? I don't know. So
Mm.
that's why we're saying I think the three countries and the other countries like Sudan and Djibouti, who are concerned, by the way, by this problem, should jointly wage a diplomatic campaign and seek clarity from the international community and from the UN, because this madness cannot just be watched from afar as if it's none of their business. Otherwise, what is the purpose of the United Nations Security Council that is sitting in New
New
York?
York.
Is the Horn of Africa not part of the world? Is the international law that's effective in the Horn of Africa is not the same international law that is effective everywhere else. So these countries, I know Eritrea may not have the necessary financial means, but although it can improve a lot, but by jointly also waging a diplomatic campaign, they can do a better job, I believe.
Mm. Um, so the rhetoric from Ethiopian Prime Minister, uh, as we know, officially started back in 2023 or 2023. Uh, Before 2023, Eritrea and Ethiopia fought the brutal civil war in Ethiopia together. Though Eritrea had its own reasons and strategic interest, but also saved the state, the Ethiopian state, from this integrating because of the internal issues that they had. When I believe when Prime Minister of Ethiopia decided to talk about the sea access, or his ambition to take Ethiopian borders into the sea, the first thing he did was throwing Eritrea under the bus. Um, so one of those, the reason I say that is because Ethiopia started blaming Eritrea for all atrocities that took place in Tigray. Even probably you remember this well. One of the former Ethiopian ambassadors, Fissa Desta, I believe his name, he was uh, he was talking about this, and he said, I don't know, he didn't mention the name, but someone told Abiy Ahmed, if you put the blames of everything onto Isaias Afwerki, which is the Eritrean president, and they will help him, they will endorse him to do anything. So there was like that effect. And then probably we mentioned this before. Getachew Reda said something about Seychelles uh, um, event. So when the war was happening, they went to Seychelles for search of agreement between the federal government and the TPLF. And he said, as according to him, in Seychelles, they agreed to squash their internal issue, to put their internal issue aside and focus on Eritrea. They said if there is a common agenda for all of us, Ethiopians, they mean, I guess, is Eritrea. But the TPLF did not go with that, I guess, according to Getachew Reda. So now, when you open Google and search Eritrea, what you see is like a headlines that paint Eritrea as aggressor, as invader of Ethiopia. And I guess you were talking about the UN. Ethiopia submitted some sort of grievance. Eritrea wrote a response on their website also. So now, when you look at the tripartite agreement, Ethiopia sees Egypt as a historical enemy. Eritrea is, uh, according to them, Eritrea is in cahoots with Egypt, and also they blame or they accuse Eritrea for invading or provoking them, because Eritrea is probably, according to them, is in Ethiopian territory. So, do you think the tripartite agreement with Egypt and Somalia, do you think Ethiopia would use that as prelude to invade Eritrea?
I don't think so. If Ethiopia were in a position to invade Eritrea, uh, would have done so a long time ago,
Mhm.
and it
Okay.
doesn't need any pretext. Uh, okay, but going back to the more important issue of putting the blame on Eritrea, uh, you rightly mentioned what Ambassador um,
So Saha, I think.
Sa, uh,
Yeah.
I forgot the full name. I used to.
So Saha Desta, I believe. Yeah.
He's one of the most. He was one of the most prominent um, TPLF leaders and who was an ambassador of Ethiopia in several Western countries. He said what he said. Of course, he didn't mention who told him that, and of course, you cannot expect him to mention that. But somebody else did say something very similar to that. And that person is Ambassador Jeffrey Feltman.
Mm,
Before when he was uh, given the task of how do you call the position, he was nominated to the assigned to the position of the special representative of the U.S. to the Horn of Africa. Before he even took the plane to come to the Horn of Africa, he did say a few things that shows where the United States would want to take the region. No, 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 okay. His critics was more directed to Eritrea, and then he criticized the tripartite agreement between Somalia, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. So he took it as his own number one mission to create a wedge between Eritrea and Ethiopia. Now, now going fast forward, if you come to go to what Mr. Getachew Reda said
mm,
about Seychelles and all the drama. Of course, I don't expect Mr. Getachew Reda to come to the media and tell us we didn't know anything. Mr. Ambassador Hammer, he dictated 1, 2, 3, and we had no choice but to go with what Mr. Mike Hammers asked us to do. I don't expect him to say that. So he tried to bring it as if it's something that evolved gradually between the Ethiopian government and TPLF, but
mm,
simply said, in my belief, and I can argue about that, it was simply dictated. The State Department, guess what? 16 diplomats were working full time to come up with a way of bringing this war to an end. Not just the war to an end, but also to repossess Ethiopia, because at some point they did feel that Ethiopia was drifting away from the U.S. Influence, and the more it was influenced by Eritrea, the further it goes from the U.S. That's what they thought, which is why they were threatening Abiy Ahmed with empowering the TPLF to make him agree to their terms, which he did at the end of the day. So I think the whole drama and all those millions of people who were killed and displaced or simply to
mm,
serve. The wars were fought in order to it was a proxy war uh, to serve the interests of the U.S. But if you tell me were the Tigrayans served, none. Were the Ethiopians benefited from that? No. So the only country that came out victorious from the 2 year devastating war is the US, because it had Ethiopia back to its total control. And today you have a government in Ethiopia that's run by the IMF and by any small junior ambassador. So if we connect the dots, we would understand that what Ambassador Fasaha said at the time was a very serious thing. And
mm,
then when the war going on, all those forest reporters were all labeling the Eritrean army, and although the Tigrayans know, the Ethiopians know that it was if there were any atrocities, much of it goes to the Ethiopian side, and many Tigrayans actually come up to say that if it was not for the Eritrean army, they would not have survived. So, but anyway, without going to detail, uh, Uh, Ethiopia did not win, Tigray did not lose, but the State Department won. That's how I would summarize the.
The outcome of the war.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Suleiman, it has been a very interesting time with you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
You're welcome, welcome, Abda.
To our viewers, the Eritrea, Egypt, and Somalia agreement is not about exclusion or hostility. It's about sovereignty, stability, and shared responsibility. Ethiopia's reaction seems more about its own insecurities than reality. Eritrea must remain principled, clear eyed, and grounded in national interest. Until next time, this is Setit, a bi weekly program. Stay informed and stay engaged. Thank you, Suleiman, again.